My name is Robin West. I work as the Senior Manager of Expedition Operations and Planning for Seabourn, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you on board an Antarctica voyage on board the Seabourn Quest. Antarctica is one of those destinations that really has to be experienced in order to understand what it's all about, and of course doing it on the Seabourn Quest, the combination of luxury and adventure really is an incredible way to experience Antarctica, and I very much hope that you enjoy your time on board the Quest and of course have a magnificent time down in Antarctica, the Great White Continent, one of the best places to be for a holiday.
Good morning, welcome to Antarctica. First landing of our cruise, South Shetland Islands, a little island called Half Moon. We always come to this island because it's a good opportunity to find chinstrap penguins nesting right behind me. We are at the end of the season, middle of February, so what we see today is most of the adults have left. A lot of them are molting, so they're not around here. Some are just guarding some of the chicks. And what you see are mostly chicks in different stages of their growth period. Most of them are already halfway or more through the process of molting their down and getting proper feathers, so soon they will be ready to hit the water and just be on their own. Others still have a lot of down on their backs and on top of their heads, so this is a very vulnerable moment for the chicks when they start venturing into the water for the first time. Penguin breeding is a dirty business, and as you can see, all that reddish around is not mud. That is penguin poo, penguin guano, and anyone coming to Antarctica gets very familiar with that, believe me.
Half Moon Island is made out of rocks that are not particularly rare. They're quite common in the Antarctic Peninsula. It's this rocks we call diorite. It's basically magma that cooled down at around 5 kilometers depth. So if there was magma here, you can imagine there might have been a volcano 5 kilometers above our heads now. And it's all been eroded away, and what we see is now the interior of the crust. There are two effects that we've noticed. One is that as they walk, generation and generations, they jump over the rock, they soften the edges, so they become a little bit rounded. They're not as efficient as the sea, but they still do some rounding of the sharp edges of the rock. And the other thing they do is that they bring small pebbles to places that the sea hasn't reached. Like where we're standing right now, you can see there are a lot of sharp angular blocks, but in between this, the rounded pebble that the penguins brought up to make their nest. So a geologist that is unaware of this might be finding an convoluted explanation for rounded pebble and sharp blocks in the same place.
This morning we came across a group of type A killer whales just outside of Courville Island in the Garlash Strait. And there were about 7 to 9 of them, and they were sticking around one area, diving pretty frequently and changing direction quite a bit. And we got a little bit closer, and they came a little bit closer, and we could actually see just under the surface a minke whale that was in the jaws of one of the killer whales. They were kind of dragging along. so many seabirds going after the little bits of flesh and oil that was coming up from the whale. You could actually see as they traveled around the slick of oil on the surface of the water that was coming off of the dead whale. And when we first got to see it, it was pretty intact and whole looking, so it must have been a very immediate and fresh kill that we just came upon. And then we got to see them tearing bits of flesh off of it, and they stayed in the area for a while, and we were able to see them quite close to the ship. So it was amazing and super special behavior to be able to witness. I just can't get over how lucky we were to be able to see that. And then that was just the beginning. We came across several groups of humpback whales outside of Wilhelmina Bay, and once we entered the bay there were even more groups of humpbacks all around, feeding and surfacing fairly often. That we got to see some bubble net feeding behavior where one whale blows a ring and spiral bubbles under the surface and then they lunge right up from the middle. And we saw that close to the ship several times. So the humpback whales are here in Wilhelmina at such a special feeding location because there's so much krill in the bay itself. All the local currents in the area make it so that there's just a lot of food concentrated in this particular bay. And these whales are feeding day and night all throughout the summer season on krill and taking advantage of all the abundance of food that's down here in Antarctica so they can stock up their blubber reserves for the journey back north to the breeding grounds. So there are at least probably 15 to 20 individuals that we've gotten to see already, and there's more whale spouts around as we continue to cruise through the bay amongst all the amazing icebergs.
Hello, I am Lieutenant Eduardo Hidalgo from the Chilean Navy. Welcome to González Vidal Station in Paradise Bay. We receive different tourist passenger ships like Seabourn Quest today. We receive all the different passengers here. We explain that we do here, and we try to show how the Chilean Navy and the Chilean Air Force, in this case, works or make presence here in Antarctica.
And we're here having great views of the gentoo penguins. Gentoo penguins are the third largest species of penguins in the world, and great activities and views that we're seeing today, especially by the parents that are feeding their chicks. The chicks are roughly 3 weeks old. That equals half the way through in the breeding cycle. So a lot of activities. Some of them have molted downy feathers. They are not ready to go yet, but still depending on the parents for food. So lots of activities. They are chasing the adults for food. So great views of them here.
We're at the north end of the Antarctic Peninsula, at the south side of the Antarctic Sound, and we're on Brown Bluff Beach. What's interesting about Brown Bluff is that Brown Bluff is an Earth analogy for something they see on Mars. And so here we are, sitting on a glacial beach, basically, surrounded by ice. But during the last ice age, about 20,000 years ago, this would have had more than a kilometer of ice on top of it. This rock right here began to intrude. It's a magma, and it came up underneath the ice sheet. It melted a lens of water and then kept erupting into that lens. And this is exactly what this rock is. Chunks of basalt and the frothy remains of the magma. As at 1300 degrees it hits freezing cold water. It gradually melted a bigger and bigger lens till finally it exploded at the surface and basalt came out. So it's a sub-aerial volcanic sequence. And what's so cool about this is that because the beach has come in and eroded this particular sequence, so it's kind of cut in half, when we go to Mars and look at the pictures that these satellites they've got going around Mars have pulled up, they find exact copies of Brown Bluff on Mars.
watching a small chick, very downy, because it still had a lot of down. It was quite buoyant and was too weak, too small and too weak to be able to swim. Made it to an ice floe and was resting, and then the leopard seal came along and investigated it. I never know why the leopard seal picks one chick over another. It decided not to eat this chick and moved on up the beach. This chick eventually did make it to shore, and we were very happy for it.
Yankee Harbor is one of the key places of the early story of Antarctica, because here in the South Shetland Islands was the first location that sealers came down, primarily from the northeastern part of the United States and from England. In the early days, a beach like this would have contained perhaps 65 or 70,000 fur seals. We literally would have been able to step almost from one to the other as we moved across the beach. The fur seals, they were taken for hats and coats and stoles for both men and women. The fashion of the era, you can imagine, coming back with a fur that was softer than anything that had seen before, warmer than had been seen because of the animal developing in such a cold environment, and coming from an unusual place like Antarctica that no one had ever heard of. The price premium was quite high and the profits were quite high. And elephant seals, and we have a few here today as well for the same reason, they were rendered down for their oil. And that oil was used primarily for lighting and other industrial uses before the age of petroleum. For almost 200 years, and even on our travels here 15 years ago, we would see virtually no fur seals at any time of the season. And so it's quite nice today to come ashore and see quite a small number beginning to grow and perhaps beginning to repopulate this beach area after 2 centuries.